This is a brief tutorial on how to set up displacement settings for the materials in the Essential Materials and HDRI pack for Blender. It's relatively easy to do this. What you're going to want to do is add a new mesh, and to bring up this menu you'll hit Shift A and you choose Mesh and Plane. And that'll add a new plane to your scene here. And then first thing you want to do is hit Tab, go to Edit Mode, and then hit W and choose Subdivide. And what this is going to do is it's going to split that plane into 4 sections. And instead of 4 here, we want a lot more. So in the Subdivide menu down here, you're going to want to change this number of cuts from 1 up to 10. And that'll give us a lot more geometry for the material to displace. And now you can go back into object mode. So if you hit Tab, you can go back into object mode. You can add the material right now, and you can see that it does displace it a little bit, but it's really jagged. So in order to get more detailed geometry here, what you want to do is go to Modifier Properties, go to Add Modifier, and choose Subdivision Surface. And you can see that starts to make it a little bit more detailed, but we want this a lot more detailed. So we're going to turn the render and the viewport subdivisions up from 2 and 1 up to 6 and 6. And you can see now that's a lot more detailed. So that also looks really, I mean, that's a lot of displacement on this material. So what you can do is under material properties here, you can always come in, and for anything that has the displacement maps, you can go in here and change this displacement from like 0.05 down to like 0.01. And that's going to be a lot more accurate for what it would look like in real life. The other thing you'll notice is the corners are rounded, and that's because of this subdivision modifier. And so to keep them square, you'll want to change this from Catmull Clark over to Simple. You'll see that that then straightens those edges out. There's one other little trick that you can check out, and I personally don't use it. I don't think that it's really worth the performance hit that you take from it. But under scene or render properties here, under feature set, you've got supported, and if you change this to experimental and then you go back down to the modifier properties, you now have this adaptive checkbox. And what that will do is it will give you more geometry here in the foreground and less detailed geometry in the background. And that can be really useful if you've got a material that has a lot of displacement and it's coming up jagged in the front and it's not nearly as detailed as you want. And I can show you how this works. If you click on Adaptive, if I zoom out here and I hit Tab and I go into Edit Mode, and I hit Tab again and I go back into object mode, that will refresh the adaptive amounts for the foreground and background. So now if I zoom into this, you'll notice if I now hit Tab, go into edit mode again, and go back into object mode, it will actually be, you really can't even tell, but it will actually, for a lot of materials, give you a lot more detailed mesh up here in the foreground and a lot less in the back. But like I said, I would recommend leaving it off. For most of the scenes, you're not going to notice it too much unless you're really zoomed in on something. Now, I actually went in and configured the displacement of all these materials, but for some reason, they're not staying at the levels that I set them at. So you'll likely want to go in and adjust the displacement on most of the materials that you use. The other thing is you'll notice that you can really see the geometry. You can really see where every single plane is and every single vertex is. So to fix that, you'll want to change this from Object, Shade Flat, to Shade Smooth. You'll see now that all those lines are gone. And so you'll probably want to change the displacement here from like 0.02 down 0.01 or even 0.005 or something in between there, like 0.007. So when you zoom out here, you can see that that looks pretty good. One of the benefits of setting up the displacement like this is if you add in a lamp here, it's going to give you a lot more realistic shadows and make your scenes look more realistic, because any light sources that you use in them are going to accurately cast shadows from the bricks like they're actually 3D. Whereas if you use the normal maps instead of the displacement maps, like if I go in here to this and I change this displacement down to 0 and I adjust like the normal up to like 5, let's go down to like 2 instead. What the normal map does is it fakes the 3D geometry. If you actually look at this from the front, it's now a completely flat surface. So if I change this to 0.005, you'll actually see the bricks here start to look 3D. So if it's an object that's like way in the background, a normal map may be the better way to go as opposed to the displacement map, because then you're not having to displace like all these objects that are in the distance in order to get the 3D look to the brick. That's it for this tutorial. If you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And I will also leave a link to the add-on in the details of this video, so that if you're coming from somewhere else like YouTube or a different website or something, you can go ahead and check out this new add-on.